One trigger pull, one body on the floor, and a moment that looked small at first, but may have changed the entire power universe forever. Davis' first kill was not just about survival. It was not just about fear. It may have been the exact moment that Power Origins Task Force found its reason to exist. What if that night was not random? What if that kill was the spark that started something much bigger behind the scenes? Davis did not wake up that day planning to become a killer. He was not the biggest name in the streets. He was not the most feared. At that time, he was still finding his place, trying to balance loyalty, pride, and pressure. When the situation turned deadly, it felt sudden, fast, almost out of control. But when we slow it down and look closely, we see something deeper. The person Davis killed was not just some random threat. That man had connections. He had history. And more important, he may have already been on the radar of law enforcement. This changes everything, because if the victim was already being watched, then Davis' first kill was not invisible. It was recorded. It was noticed. It was locked into a system that tracks patterns and rising players. The moment Davis pulled that trigger, he crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. Before that night, he was part of the game. After that night, he became a real piece on the board. First kills in this world are not just about removing an enemy. They are about stepping into a new level. It is like the streets test you, and once you pass that test, your name carries more weight. People start to whisper, rivals start to study you, and law enforcement starts to pay attention. This is where the connection to the Power Origins Task Force becomes clear. A task force is not built because of one big kingpin. It is built because small events show a pattern. Davis' kill may have been the first sign of a new wave rising. Think about how these task forces usually start. They are created when officials see early signs of future threats. They look for young, smart, hungry individuals who show the same signs that past bosses once showed. Davis checked many of those boxes. He was sharp, he understood strategy, and now he proved he was willing to take a life when pushed. That combination is dangerous in the eyes of the law. His first kill may have told the task force that another major player could be forming. Instead of waiting for him to grow into a ghost-level figure, they could decide to track him from the start, stop the fire before it becomes a wildfire. There is also the emotional side of it. After that kill, Davis was not the same. Even if he did not show it on the outside, something changed inside him. A first kill brings fear, but it also brings power. It shows you what you are capable of. It removes doubt. That shift in mindset is important. The task force does not just track actions. They track growth. They study how a person reacts after violence. Do they step back? Or do they step forward? Davis stepped forward. He did not run from the life. He adapted. That is a red flag for any federal unit watching closely. Another detail many people miss is timing. Around the same period, the streets were already unstable. Different crews were fighting for space. Old systems were falling apart. When chaos grows, law enforcement responds with structure. A special unit like the Power Origins Task Force would need a reason to get funding and approval. A clean case, a clear example of a rising threat. Davis' first kill could have provided that. A young operator connected to bigger names, involved in a deadly incident, showing signs of ambition. That is the perfect file to present in a meeting room and say, we need to act now. So when we look back at that scene, we should not only focus on the gunshot, we should focus on the ripple effect. That body on the ground may have opened a new investigation. It may have linked names, phones, and money trails. It may have pushed certain officials to create a focus group whose job is to stop the next empire before it rises. And if that is true, then Davis did not just take a life that night. He may have helped create the very system that will hunt him and others like him. In this universe, nothing happens alone. Every action connects to a bigger design. Davis' first kill was not just a personal turning point. It may have been the birth moment of something much larger and far more dangerous. The circumstances surrounding Davis' first kill were far from random. And every small detail of that moment matters more than most viewers realize at first glance. It may have seemed like a simple act of survival, a split-second decision under pressure, but when you examine it closely, the scene reveals layers of tension, calculation, and foreshadowing. Davis wasn't acting purely on instinct. Every choice he made in those moments hinted at a deeper understanding of the dangerous world he was entering. His target wasn't just an obstacle. The person he eliminated was someone with connections, someone whose actions had already rippled across the criminal network. By taking this life, Davis inadvertently shifted more than just the balance on the street. He became a node in a web that law enforcement and the task force would begin to tie. Looking at Davis' mindset, it's clear he wasn't the same person before and after the kill. There's a subtle transformation in how he observes his surroundings, how he anticipates moves, and how he calculates risk. Prior to this moment, he operated under a set of known rules, following instructions and maintaining loyalty. But the act of taking a life forced him to confront the raw reality of power, control, fear, and consequence. In the Power universe, first kills often serve as a rite of passage, a moment where characters step into a new version of themselves. For Davis, it was the night his personal ambitions and survival instincts aligned with lethal precision. And it's this alignment that makes his kill not just a street-level event, but a pivotal point that reverberates across the broader law enforcement and criminal landscape. There are also details in the scene that are easy to overlook, but carry massive significance. The location, the timing, even the way Davis approached the situation all suggest premeditation on some level. He knew that hesitation could cost him more than just his life. It could expose him, compromise allies, or create chaos in a network he was trying to navigate. Each movement, each glance, and every reaction shows that he understood the stakes, even if he didn't fully comprehend how the federal or criminal systems might respond. Law enforcement, particularly specialized units like the Power Origins Task Force, watch these seemingly small ripples. A young operator taking out a connected individual is exactly the type of pattern that signals the emergence of a rising threat. Davis' first kill, therefore, becomes more than personal. It becomes an early warning that draws attention from outside the streets, beyond strategy and consequence. There's a psychological layer that transforms this act into something bigger. The first kill leaves an imprint on the killer and everyone around them. Davis suddenly carries the knowledge that he is capable of altering lives permanently. That awareness changes interactions, decisions, and alliances. Others in his circle notice it too, even if subtly, and it shifts the dynamics around him. 4. The task force. These shifts are critical. They indicate a new operator emerging, someone adaptable, intelligent, and increasingly dangerous. The kill acts as a signal, unintentionally connecting Davis to a larger narrative that law enforcement is piecing together. Finally, examining the kill in context with the network around him shows a chain reaction. Phones, contacts, and surveillance. Lines that seem dormant suddenly become relevant. Officials start mapping relationships, cross-checking past incidents, and identifying patterns that might have otherwise gone unnoticed. This single violent act becomes a node in a much larger web. For Davis, it's the start of a path where every action is being measured. Every decision has consequences far beyond his immediate understanding. It's this combination of personal transformation, strategic ripples, and law enforcement response that ties his first kill directly to the origins of the task force. It's not just a street moment, it's the ignition point for something much larger. A catalyst that sets off events which will shape the future of the Power universe. If you want, I can immediately continue with Section 3 in the same detailed, faceless style, keeping it unique and 4,000 characters. This will maintain continuity and fully explore the connection to the task force. Do you want me to do that next? The Power Origins Task Force didn't appear out of nowhere. Units like this are created when patterns emerge, when law enforcement identifies the potential rise of new, influential players who could disrupt existing criminal or political systems. Davis' first kill, small as it seemed at the time, fit perfectly into this pattern. It was more than a single violent act. It was a signal. In the streets, it marked him as someone willing to take extreme measures. In the eyes of law enforcement, it marked him as someone whose trajectory could become dangerous if left unchecked. The task force exists to intercept these trajectories early, studying the moves, associations, and decisions of emerging figures before they grow into the type of powerhouses that dominate entire cities. Every detail of Davis' first kill, from timing to method, made him exactly the kind of individual this unit would want on their radar. It's important to understand how the task force operates. They aren't chasing only the high-profile kingpins, the ones everyone already knows. They are looking for the rising stars, the strategic minds, and those with ambition and influence, especially when those traits manifest alongside violent capability. Davis' first kill demonstrated both intelligence and courage under pressure. That may have been born from necessity, but it also revealed his ability to think several steps ahead. He wasn't just reacting, he was maneuvering within a high-risk environment, making decisions that balance loyalty, personal survival, and long-term positioning. These are exactly the behaviors the task force studies. In their reports, officers note not just the act itself, but what it suggests about mindset, potential, and influence over others. Davis' name would have begun appearing in internal files as a subject worth tracking, even if no immediate arrest or formal investigation took place. Beyond his personal qualities, the circumstances of the kill exposed connections that the task force could not ignore. Networks, contacts, and affiliations revealed through this one event allowed law enforcement to map relationships and potential threats in ways that had previously been invisible. Davis' first kill became a starting point for a chain of surveillance and intelligence gathering. By the time the task force fully realized his significance, he had already set in motion events that would place him at the center of the investigation. Even unintended consequences played a role. The victim's ties, the money trail, the phone connections all contributed to a growing dossier on Davis. This was a kill that acted as a doorway, opening the path for federal attention that might have otherwise taken months or years to appear. The psychological effect on Davis also ties into the task force's perspective. They study behavior patterns as much as actions. After the first kill, Davis demonstrated changes that were subtle but critical: confidence in negotiation, decisiveness in conflict, and an ability to anticipate threats. These traits are invaluable to a rising criminal but are red flags for law enforcement. The task force is essentially a predictive unit. They don't just respond to crime, they try to forecast it. Davis' actions became a textbook example of how a first kill can serve as a catalyst for personal evolution that aligns with the emergence of a new threat. Each move he made afterward, whether in alliances, decisions, or confrontations, would have been analyzed for potential risk and influence, reinforcing why the task force was forming its strategy around individuals like him. Finally, the timing of the task force's emergence is crucial. In the power universe, major operations often coincide with instability. New factions, shifting allegiances, and growing violence create windows of opportunity for law enforcement to intervene before chaos escalates. Davis' first kill occurred in such a moment, and its timing magnified its significance. By connecting dots from that night to subsequent events, the task force could justify its creation, define its objectives, and begin focusing on rising threats with unprecedented precision. In essence, Davis' action acted as the ignition for the task force's formation. What seemed like a single, isolated incident on the street became a foundational piece of evidence that shaped federal strategy. His kill didn't just alter his path, it became a central point in the architecture of surveillance, investigation, and intervention that the task force would employ to control the next generation of criminal influence. The connection between Davis' first kill and the Power Origins task force is more than timing, its cause and effect. That one act set off a chain reaction that law enforcement could not ignore. In the streets, a first kill often changes a person's reputation, but in the federal eye, it becomes a signal that someone is moving into a zone of influence that demands attention. Davis' victim was not a random target. He had ties, and those ties trace back to other operators, networks, and transactions. By eliminating him, Davis unknowingly exposed connections, phone numbers, locations, and even financial patterns. Each of these elements became data points that the task force could use to map emerging power structures. It's as if a single puzzle piece had been placed, and suddenly the larger image started to take shape. The ripple effect of the kill also goes beyond intelligence. It influenced behavior. After the event, Davis acted differently. His confidence increased, his decisiveness sharpened, and his approach to risk evolved. Law enforcement units like the task force are trained to spot this kind of evolution because it signals potential escalation. They aren't just tracking bodies, they're tracking growth. A first kill can often mark the point where someone stops being a follower and starts operating as a strategist, someone who can influence others and shift power balances. Davis' behavior after the kill would have signaled this evolution, marking him as a subject worthy of sustained surveillance. The task force doesn't just respond, they predict. And Davis' trajectory became a textbook example of early warning signs. Another dimension is strategy. When we analyze the scene and Davis' decision-making process, there is evidence that he understood stakes far beyond the immediate confrontation. He recognized the potential fallout of hesitation, the importance of decisiveness, and the impact of controlling perception in the streets. These traits made him valuable to allies and dangerous to enemies. From the task force's perspective, these qualities are red flags because they indicate that a young operator has the potential to grow into a figure who could dominate a territory, influence crews, and manipulate situations to his advantage. By tracking these early indicators, the task force can intercept or influence outcomes before a full-scale criminal empire emerges. In this sense, Davis' first kill did more than remove an individual. It revealed the structure of potential power that law enforcement would want to monitor closely. Davis' kill also created a trail, not just physical evidence, but a chain of relationships and consequences that could be analyzed and leveraged. Phone records, eyewitness accounts, financial transactions, and even rumor networks all became relevant in mapping the growing influence of this new player. The task force could study these patterns, seeing how a single violent act could ripple through multiple layers of criminal and law enforcement systems. In the power universe, these networks are interdependent. One disruption, one death can set off changes across the entire ecosystem. That's exactly what happened here. Davis' kill provided a starting point for law enforcement to anticipate where influence might spread and who might be next on the map. Finally, the human element is critical. The first kill teaches lessons about intent, adaptability, and resilience. It reveals whether a person freezes, panics, or adapts. Davis' response suggested that he had the capability to manage stress, make difficult choices, and operate in high-pressure environments, traits that make someone dangerous but also predictable in the P. It turns they leave behind. The task force, in essence, reads these patterns to understand behavior and forecast risk. This means Davis' first kill did not just create a moment, it created a profile, a dossier of tendencies, instincts, and potential strategies. The event served as both a marker in his personal evolution and a blueprint for law enforcement to anticipate his next moves. The ripple effect of a single act, analyzed carefully, transformed into a roadmap for the task force, connecting Davis' personal choices to the larger narrative of surveillance, strategy, and control in the power universe. The consequences of Davis' first kill reach far beyond that single night. They continue to echo through every decision he makes and every move the task force takes. Once the federal unit recognized his potential, every action he took became part of a growing pattern. Surveillance, intelligence gathering, and strategy were no longer reactive, they became predictive. Davis, and knowingly became a litmus test for how rising players adapt, evolve, and influence their environment. Every alliance he formed, every deal he negotiated, and every confrontation he survived fed into the task force's understanding of emerging threats. In this sense, his first kill was not an isolated incident, it was the ignition point for a complex network of monitoring, intervention, and anticipation beyond the immediate data. There's a psychological ripple. Law enforcement pays attention not only to actions, but to behavior under stress, decision-making under pressure, and responses to shifting power dynamics. Davis' first kill marked a transformation. He moved from uncertainty and survival to calculation and influence. The task force could observe subtle changes, confidence in negotiations, willingness to make decisive moves, even how he handled fear and loyalty. These observations inform strategy, a predictive model of what might happen next, who could be recruited, and where cracks in loyalty might appear. In other words, Davis' kill helped shape the future approach of the task force, teaching them what signals to watch, what patterns to anticipate, and what interventions might work before a new power player could rise unchecked. Another layer is the strategic advantage Davis' first kill inadvertently provided. By taking out a target with connections, he exposed the network to analysis. Law enforcement could follow communication trails, financial exchanges, and interpersonal links that would otherwise remain hidden. The kill acted like a spotlight, illuminating the early stages of what could have become